Hello Saints, and welcome to another video. Today we're looking at which baptism is more biblical, immersion or sprinkling. If we want to understand the things like baptism in the New Testament, we have to first look in the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, the baptism that was done there was called Mikvah. This was a washing, a cleansing in the Old Testament that the Jews still practice today. To cleanse the flesh, once they're unclean, they need to go through the mikvah to become clean again. Mikvah, the first time this was mentioned, was actually in Genesis, where the earth was immersed with water. And then out of the water, a new earth was birthed, right? And the Hebrew word for gathered waters in Genesis 1 verse 10 is actually mikvah. So when God gathered the waters into seas, the earth was resurrected out of that water. So in Jewish thought, it's the same way that when they go into the mikvah, which was always by immersion, it was never sprinkling. And when a person immerses themselves into the waters of mikvah, some Jews believe that they're now becoming a new creation, or they're going through a rebirthing process spiritually when they come out of that mikvah. Even when someone would become a teacher or a rabbi, that would go through the mikvah. Before Sabbath, people would go into the mikvah. So there's a lot of traditions that they do to go and to be immersed. And we obviously as Christians, we don't do this as a ritual over and over again, but this Jewish thought of baptism, of the mikvah, of immersion, has never really changed throughout history. And if we just study the word baptism, it actually means in the Greek to be immersed or to be dipped, and it's a full immersion. So by studying Jewish thought, by studying Old Testament scriptures and looking how the Jews would practice their faith, we can come to the conclusion that it's always by immersion. In the New Testament, if we just remove all Jewish thought and culture and tradition and all these things, we can see two very clear scriptures where it talks about specifically that they were actually immersed. And without looking at the word baptism, we can come to this conclusion. So if we read Matthew 3:16, where Jesus was baptized, this is what it says. After he was baptized, Jesus came up immediately from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending as a dove and settling on him. So it says that Jesus came up. He was baptized, immersed, and then he came up out of the water. So if he was just sprinkled, he didn't have to come up out of the water, right? Because he could just sit on a table, on a chair, and he would just be poured over. But here it says he was baptized and he came out of the water. We see another example in Acts chapter 8, verses 38 to 39. It says, and he ordered that the chariot stop, and they both went down into the water, Philip as well as the eunuch, and he baptized him. When they came up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord snatched Philip away, and the eunuch no longer saw him, but went on his way rejoicing. So here it says that they came up out of the water. So the eunuch saw that there was water, and he was like, hey, what hinders me to be baptized right now? Philip said, if you believe, you can get baptized. So they went into the water, got baptized, and says came out of the water. If it was just sprinkling or just a pouring, they didn't have to go into the water, right? Philip could just take his hands and pour it over him. But we see in these instances that they always went into the water and came out of the water. And if we just look at the word baptism, it means to be immersed. That is the literal translation of baptism. And if we just study Jewish thought, if we go back into the Old Testament, again, it's one God, God does not change. We can see the mikvah is by immersion as well. Hey, just very quickly, wanted to invite you to join our Telegram chat to take part in constructive conversations about the scriptures. If that's something you're interested in, click the link down below. And back to the video. So now the question stands, where did this tradition come from? Why are some people or some churches sprinkling or pouring over people who want to get baptized? When I looked into this, it kind of came out of an exception where some people couldn't get baptized, maybe because they were in their deathbed and they couldn't get out, or maybe they were in prison. So what was an exception, people made into a command or tradition, even though we don't see this anywhere scripturally. Now, I believe that if there's an exception and someone is on their deathbed and they can't be immersed, yes, I think God is going to honor that obedience to the word just by pouring over or sprinkling. But then if this person gets the chance to be immersed after, the next logical thing would be to do to actually get immersed, because then they're obedient to the word. And because we are following the word, who is Christ, we have to be obedient to him. And just like he was baptized, we need to be baptized to fulfill all righteousness. And Jesus said those who believe will be baptized. And in many cases, which we will talk about in another video, is infant baptism. How does this compare to Scripture? A baby or an infant cannot believe, so they cannot get baptized. Because it's only when we believe, when we have faith, then we can be baptized. But we're going to talk about that in a future video. If you enjoyed the series, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're going to talk about a lot more topics where we compare commands versus tradition, and what tradition can we keep, what should we throw out. If you have any questions about this specific video, put them in the comments down below. I'm happy to address any other questions. I'll see you in the next video. Maranatha.
Thank you for watching. We hope it blessed you. Make sure to watch the next recommended video. If you want to work with us to prepare your community for the Lord's return, visit our website.